Perfect. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning into. I am so excited to be here. Welcome back to the Power Platform Connectors and Integrations Lab call. It is November 9th, 2022, and this is the first session that we have held for a long time. I'm so excited to introduce myself. I am Jocelyn. Some of you guys may have been familiar with Natalie. I am her, I'm her predecessor basically, or actually she's my predecessor. I have taken over in her role. She is still here in Power Automate working on the customer acquisition and retention team, and I am new to the connector space. I previously worked on Cloudflows as part of the Maker Experience team. You might know some of the features that I have worked on. I made the first iteration of the undo button as well as the delay button. And I also worked on Cloudflows back when it was UI flows on the PPAC integration. I am originally from the East Coast. I was born in Brooklyn and I spent most of my life in New Jersey before coming out to the West Coast to Seattle, where I am now, where I graduated from the University of Washington, Seattle with a major in mechanical engineering and a minor in Spanish. We have a great schedule planned for today. I'll be giving a little bit of a connector count update since our last session in April. Then I'll be handing it over to my colleague Amjed, our certification PM that some of you guys might know. But I also can tell that there's a good amount of audience here who is new to the connector space. So Amjed will be telling you a lot about how you can also get a connector certified through our program. After that, we have two awesome demos lined up with Chandra and Nick. And I'd also like to give a quick thank you to Rebecca for all of her support in putting this event together.
You're very welcome and welcome.
Thank you, everybody. And actually, let me share some links in the chat for you guys to connect with me. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, next slide. So I'm super excited to tell everybody that we are now at 870 total connectors. We had a train go out yesterday. Thank you, Amjed, and our other vendor, SHRTCODE. And just to put that into comparison of how much we've grown since we had our last session before summer break, we were at 685 at the end of April. So that's definitely a big boost in the ecosystem. We have this little pie chart here to show how that breakdown happens. So of those 870, we have 196 made by independent publishers, 227 made from Microsoft first-party APIs, and 447 that are made from verified publishers. I'll do a quick overview of what that means for the people new to our community, but independent publishers are community members like you guys that leverage open source APIs to make connectors in our platform. First party obviously is Microsoft, and verified publishers are third-party companies that own their own APIs and make connectors with us. So think Adobe or DocuSign, Autodesk, companies like that. But Amjed will go into a lot more specific details there. The other thing that I wanted to share with you all, and I'll drop this link in the chat as well, is that I am super excited to have announced that we are bringing back the Flow of the Week blog post. A little bit of context is in 2019, there was a blog post series called Flow of the Week, where we wrote about a great use case for a flow once a week, basically. But back then it was focused a little bit more on the developer and maker experience. And now I really want to focus on business users like you guys. So how I'm going to do that is I want to hear stories and submissions from you all about a really important flow that you use or multiple flows that you use that affect your day, affect your job, and I would love to write about it, to make a template about it, and to share it with all the other users. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat, and I would love to hear from you guys. And please reach out to me to any of my socials as well. They're on the screen and they're in the chat. And now I would like to introduce Amjed.
Thank you so much, Justin. Hi, everyone. I'm Amjed Ayoub. I'm the certification PM for the team. I started this position like 8 months ago, and I'm really excited for this opportunity with Microsoft. Today, I will present our certification process and showing our different type of connectors and how you can get your connector certified with us. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to give like just a quick idea what a connector is. So just imagine that it's like a proxy or a wrapper around your API. And that wrapper will allow this API to talk to Microsoft different platforms such like Microsoft Flows, Power Apps, and Logic Apps. And it will allow users for Power Automate to use your connectors pre-built actions and triggers with no code needed at all. And this is what makes connectors so powerful. So next slide. Okay, so just imagine that this thing in the middle, the blue thing, is the connector. Before we have the Azure APM management, and this is a website that will work as to host your API definition. Your API definition will be stored in something called Swagger. So if we go back to the connector here, we see that the smallest circle is open API definition. So that's your Swagger file. We're gonna add to that API definition some metadata like actions and triggers, which will bring that definition or API definition to live. And then maybe some code. It's like not required to add code to your connector. You can definitely publish and certify a codeless connector. But this feature also is still available. You can add some code to your connector. And by the end, when the connector is ready, it will allow the API that is behind this connector to talk to Microsoft different platforms. Next slide. I want to show the different types of connectors. We have three main different types, and I want to start with the last one, which is the custom connector. This is a type of connector that is available for anybody. Anybody can go and build a custom connector. There is no restrictions there, no requirements, nothing. Anyone can go build a connector, custom connector, and of course, it will be available only for you. You can share it with with somebody else, and it will become available for those people that you share it with only. So here, like in public, when under availability, when I say public, I mean public, the people that you share it with only. So it's not going to be available for everybody on Power Platform. If you want to publish this and get it certified, the custom connector, it needs to be one of these categories, either independent publisher and verified publisher. And as you can see, the only difference between those two types is the ownership of the API. So both connectors will be available for public. All users will be all Power Automate users, Flows and Power Apps and Logic Apps. All users can use this connector. But the only difference is the ownership. If you own the API behind this connector, then you are a verified publisher. If you do not own the API, you still can publish a connector as an independent publisher. Next slide, please. Okay, and now after we know like what type of partners we are, we're gonna start registering our connector. The first step would be to register the connector and fill out the Microsoft registration form. And this step is required only from verified publishers or API owners only. And in this form, we just like collecting some general information about partners, for example, about the company, the size of the company, confirmation from them that they do own the API, a privacy policy, what is the purpose of the connector, and does it really offer a good value for the community? Does it bring something new? After that, after we approve the connector, we were gonna start preparing the connector and getting the artifacts ready. And this step here is required from both partners, independent and verified publishers. They both need to meet the requirements for Microsoft. For example, the title of the connector should be less than 30 characters. The description should be between 30 and 500. All operations should have summaries and descriptions. Responses, for example, we do not allow default responses. You should define a proper response with a valid schema definition. The English language for all the files. This is a really good and important step to make sure that there is no grammatical errors or typos. in your files, and this will help later on after your connector gets published and certified. It might be eligible for localization later on. We do localize for multiple languages. And just to make that job easier and make it going smooth with no issues, that's why we ask for a good English language from the beginning. So next slide. After that, we're gonna get going into preparing our artifacts and metadata. And for that, there is some important properties that is important to include. For example, the publisher and stack owner. For independent publishers, those two should be different because the publisher does not own the API and stack owner is the owner of the API. In case of verified publisher, they should be the same because who is publishing the connector should be owning the API. And then, for example, some properties like the contact, the website, privacy policy, and what categories the connector is under. And then the artifacts, which will include the API definition for the connector and the API properties. For independent publisher, we ask only for two files, the API definition swagger.json and the API property.json. There is no icon is required for the independent publishers. Microsoft will provide an icon for them. And then for verified publishers or API owners, we're going to ask for the API definition Swagger file, API properties, and they have to provide an icon for their connector as well. And from all partners, we ask for a good, nice, small file called README. And this README file will be will be the documentation for your connector in our open source repo in GitHub. And we recommend using a tool called Bacon tool. And of course, all these I can share after I finish presenting. I will share all links for those tools and all those documents. We have a tool called Bacon tool. You can use it to download your custom connector from Power Automate, and you can use it also to validate your artifacts before submitting to our certification process. So you make sure that your files are ready and valid for certification. So it's very recommended, highly recommended to validate your artifacts before submitting them. And then step 5, after we validate and we got all our files ready, we are ready to submit. The first submission we ask is to submit in our open source repo on GitHub. For independent publishers, there one more step here that we ask them to add some screenshots for their connectors as they are confirming that they test their connector and the connector is working as expected. And this is the icon that they will, Microsoft will give for all independent publishers. And for both partners, they have to submit all artifacts in GitHub. We run some checks, for example, the security check and the Swagger and change validation check. Those are checks that will run. They are almost the same checks that runs in the Bacon tool. So if you ran the Bacon.validate and there was no errors there, then those issues should be passing with no issues as well. The last one would be the CLA, our CLA agreement. And it's required for all partners to sign this agreement in GitHub. Usually it takes 2 weeks for Microsoft to review your PR, but now we were taking within 1 week to review the PR and move forward. After the PR is merged and approved, we will ask verified publishers only to take the same artifacts that they submitted in GitHub, and they can use their latest commit ID from GitHub to submit to ISV Studio. For independent publishers, this step is not required at all. We do not require any independent publisher to create an account in ISV Studio and submit there. We will create the connector for them in ISV Studio. So for independent publishers, what they need is to submit in GitHub. So after that, partners, verified publishers will upload to ISV Studio with their artifacts. Our engineers, I'm still in the same slide, sorry, Jocelyn. No, go back. Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. So our engineers will review your submission in ISV Studio, making sure that you submitted the same files in GitHub or used the latest commit ID from GitHub. that you also submitted a good icon that meets our requirements as well. If everything looks good in your submission, we will move forward and we will prepare your connector for testing. In that stage, and that's that step also for both partners, verified and independent. We will deploy the connector to preview region, and we will test all connectors, fields there, all operations and all triggers, making sure that it is working as expected. After the functional verification is done, and if the connector passes our test, we will ask partners to test. And of course, this step now is only for verified publishers, because if you remember, for independent publisher, we already asked them to add some screenshots along with their PR in GitHub to verify that they already did this partner testing. So for independent publisher, it's done. For verified publishers, we will ask them in ICV Studio to go create an environment. And for creating this environment and testing your connector, you will need a valid Power Automate license. Now, next slide. After partner is testing, and if your connector is working as you expect in preview region, you will confirm with our engineers in ICV Studio that you tested and the connector is ready for deployment. And this is the latest step in the certification process. Usually it takes 3 to 4 weeks because we deploy to different regions, and each region take 1 day to deploy. For example, first region would be testing, next region would be USA preview, and then Asia, except of some countries, and so on. So each region will take 1 day, and in total, they will take like 12 to 14 days to complete. And that's for deployment. After, next slide. Just like a quick review over the steps and like see the difference between verified publishers and independent publishers. For registration, this step is only required from verified publishers. Preparing the connector metadata and artifacts are required from both. GitHub is required from both. ICV Studio is required from VPs, only verified publishers. For independent publishers, Microsoft will create the connector in ICV Studio. For functional verification or Microsoft testing, it's required for both. We test both partners' connectors, and also partner testing is required from both. Deployment also will be done for both connectors. Next slide. And now, this is a very good point, and I think all partners should be aware of this. We allow like updating the connector during the certification process and after it gets deployed, of course. But any update during the certification process will reset the process to the beginning. You will go back to the first step where you need to submit a pull request with your updated artifacts. Next slide, please. And then just like why it's good to certify a connector and not just have it as a custom connector. First of all, it's free and no cost at all to certify your connector. The second thing, you will be belonging to like your connector will be listed in the official list of Microsoft connectors. You can gain visibility for or connector. Your connector will be shown in the different Microsoft platforms. Power Apps, Logic Apps, and Power Automate. Of course, that will expand the reach of your API by the users of Power Automate. You can unlock many marketing benefits. Of course, we have a blog post, monthly blog post that we share our new and updated connectors in, and that blog post also gets listed in social media. And I think the most important thing is the last one, that you can get a feedback and technical feedback from Microsoft with any issue with your connector. You can reach out to our team and we will be more than happy to help. And last thing, just benefits of deployment and what you can see after deployment. You can see your connector usage and key insights anytime in ICV Studio. You can submit and update your connector anytime after deployment. You can monitor the connector in the community discussion forum and see users' feedback and what they think about your connector. And the last thing, that you can remove the preview tag if your connector is qualified for general availability. And this is a feature we have. All connectors that we deploy, all new connectors will be deployed and certified with a preview tag next to it at the beginning. And it's just for us a way to like know that this is still not eligible for general availability. You can move to general availability if your connector meeting our requirements or required criteria, which is in the next slide. Your connector, for example, should, like the API should be in production, not in testing. The availability of the connector should be 99.95%. The success rate, for example, should be above 80. And all these information will be available for you in ISV Studio in the under the connector telemetry. And of course, we ask for a support 24/7. I think we changed that lately. We are asking for minimum 40 hours per week of support for the connector, and also recommended criteria. For example, active users above 500 in the last 3 weeks. Usage should be above 50 monthly active connections. But also, this is just a recommended criteria, not required. And there's an exception, like if you do not meet those two, but your connector has been in like published and certified for more than 6 months, and you meet all the required criteria, you still can move to GA. So that's all, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Amjed. That was a really fantastic explanation of the certification process. And I want to affirm that when you guys are going and submitting your connectors, it is Amjed behind that GitHub that's going to be giving you that feedback, that's going to be helping you along that certification process. So you got to meet the face behind GitHub today. Thank you so much. And Amjed, if you had the chance, would you mind dropping the links to the documentation for the certification process, as well as our connector partner management email in case people have questions in the chat?
Yes, I will. And also, I want to say, if anybody has like questions, I might take them in the chat as well. Yeah.
Yes, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Awesome. Rebecca, what's up?
Yeah, I thought I'll just raise my hand. I have a couple of questions, two actually. So, what is, in your experience, the part of the process where most publishers struggle? So, because it was a very good overview, but is there like a specific part of the process that you need to help publishers to get to the hurdle to actually get certified?
Oh, well, like I want to say, most partners like fail in preparing the Swagger file, which is the very important file. Some of them would like have empty properties which we do not allow. Um, um, Another issue sometimes is like an incorrect icon, and this is only for verified publishers. But I want to say that in our feedback in GitHub, we try to give the feedback exactly like at the line that needs to be changed, and be very descriptive, like, hey, please change this to that. So we'll be like explaining everything for partners, letting them understanding why this change is needed and what needs to be done.
Great. And one other question for the going to GA with your connector, the support for the connector, is that the same requirement for independent publisher connectors and let's call it first-party connector or third-party connectors where you own the API?
Yes. Both partners need to support their connectors. Yes.
Thanks.
But it's not 24/7. It's 40 hours a week. That's the type. Yes, just
Yeah,
don't
actually,
be
that's
daunted.
why that's why we changed it to 40 hours to like also include our independent publishers and make them also available to provide some support for their connectors as well.
Yeah, because I know that most independent publishers will not be 24/7 available. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, we're doing really well on time, which is fantastic. So now I am really excited to introduce our two demos. First, we have Chandra, and I will drop his links in the chat. And after that, we will have Nick, and I will also drop his contacts in the chat as well. I'm going to stop sharing, and you go ahead and take over, Chandra.
Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Chandra. So nice to meet you all. So let me share my screen. I have a couple of slides that I want to share. Yeah, so today the demo would be SHRTCODE demo, where built a connector during while I was waiting for my new office to join. So that was like couple of days I had, and then I was like, okay, why to stay free? I can build a connector, so I thought of building it. So this is my little introduction. I'm from India. I'm working at a Damco Solutions company in the Dubai as a Power Platform tech specialist. Recently, I've been promoted. Uh, I'm also a independent in a community user group leader. I've been, maintaining monthly calls, connecting with people and helping them with their problems in Power Platform. It can be Power Automate or it can be Power Apps, and then making some demos and explaining new features in Power Platform. All sorts of things I've been doing. And also from past year, I've been working as like, contributing to Microsoft in the way of independent publisher. In most of the time I like to know about technologies, and I like to play with the data and like building visualizations and making data analysis. And also I like programming. I always try to keep things and like what is coming in the technology and what is the programming and all. So that's all about me. And if we go next slide, this is where we have the short code connector that I built. So it's simply like the title says, the privacy friendly URL shortener. Many of people in the world like using websites and all, they might know about tiny URL, so which is a famous one. But this is has like specific features that he short code has. So today I'd like to show them. So let's go to the demo. So right now, you can just go on to powerautomate.com, like make.powerautomate.com website, and then go to connector section, and then you will be able to find a short code in independent publisher section. So here we have currently only two actions are available, which is even from the original API. One is to create a shorten link, and one is to get information about a short link, the link that you have created. So today we are going to create short links for URLs. So basically what this requirement would come is where example, let's say in the organization you have maybe local on-premise applications with longer URLs, or client applications are there that needs to access through web, and you need to always worry about URLs with longer URL. So I think I just thought of, okay, if this connector is there, everything can be stored securely, and then using a code only you will be able to get it that whatever the URL that you have provided. So I'll show you right now. Here I have list, SharePoint list with a few columns like website name, the code, short link, and everything. So we are going to use Power Automate Flow to create a new item there for a website. Right now I have two websites for I want to build uh, short URL for. So let's just go there and create instant flow. Let's name it. Let's create that, and let's go ahead and create manually. So now we have one connector. So because it is manual flow, we need to give the URL, we need to pass the URL. So let's say URL, and then we can go to next step. This is where we will take the independent publisher connector, which is shortcode. Let's give it a minute. There it is. So here we have like two actions that we explained seen earlier. So we'll click on the shorten link, and then should pop up the URL. Basically, it will ask you for all the terms and conditions about the connector because it is an independent publisher connector. So I've been already tried. So that is why it's directly asking me to show the URL. So now I'll be inputting the URL from the manual flow. So there it is. So right now we have the URL. Now our next step is to add that whatever the code and the website name and everything into the SharePoint list is our goal. So let's go and search for SharePoint. So here we can go to SharePoint connector and look for create item. There it is. Here, because I created in my list instead of SharePoint list. So I just need to copy the URL, paste it, and then I'll be able to see the lists are available in my list. Just give a minute. There it is, shortcode list, which we have there. So here right now title is there, which is nothing but the website name. At the back end, it's always stays as primary. So right now, what we need to do is we need to use a formula to extract the domain name from the domain so that we can use that as a title, a little smart way. So recently, format data by example has been in the preview. So let's give it a try. Here we want to extract the main URL from the original URL, domain name from the original URL, and we can give the example. Okay, this is what we'll be giving to you, and we will be expecting dot right, and we can have another example for Power Automate maybe, so that it will be concrete and works perfectly. So we can get for expression, and there it is. We can give it a try so that we will know exactly what the expression is doing. Then it's working fine. Now let's click on apply, and it is there. So we'll just go ahead. And so another thing here, this is where we need to give shorten link. I just want to say that here the column that I created as a hyperlink, because we'll be directly coming here and accessing the link instead of copying it again, then opening the item and all. So that is the reason we just need to add HTTP here, so that we can directly add the shortened code here and the code here, so that everything will be there. Now let's just verify that everything is in place, and then we can save. Once it is saved, we can go ahead and test it. Little heads up here, there might be a bug about a manual trigger right now, but no issue. If bug is there, there is a workaround for that. Okay, everything looks cool for as of now. Let's paste the link. Sorry. So let's get the link from here and paste it and run. Oh, there it is. That is a bug, so no worries. Let's just the simple workaround is just delete the trigger and manually and add it again. So just I've already submitted about it. Let's see, anything is missing from here. The URL is missing. Put it here, and everything should look fine. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and try it again, and probably it should work. There it is. So now if we go here, you can see. So the website name was extracted, the code is there, and here we have that little short code. We can directly click it, and then we can access it. So if right now we have only one, so later on if we might have a number of our list items, you can quickly see the name, which one you want to access. I know Microsoft in Azure, people working on Azure developing, they have like number of blades they have, so they need to always remember. So I think this will be a best solution for them to keep things everything in track. So that's the connector demo. And here, like little feedback, if anybody wants to join the community to have conversations, to share their experiences, we are all open to give you a platform for that. And if you're having problems, you can feel free to join, and then we are here to help each other, and share is caring, sharing is caring. So yeah, that's all. Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chandra, for sharing. I also dropped the link to the documentation for your connector, as well as where users can go find it on Power Automate's website to try to leverage it themselves. Really appreciate you taking the time to demo for us today.
Thank you.
Awesome. And with that, we will hand it over to our last section and last demo for the day. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, thank you very much. Adele, I saw you had a question for Chandra. Did you want to ask him that?
No, sorry, I misclicked it.
Oh, no problem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The slides I have
Nick,
were for...
can I give you a short introduction?
Oh, yes, of course.
So so this has been in the works for at least 6 months. When we started with this call, we had the independent publisher connector demos, like Chandra just did, and Nick said, "Oh, I have a connector to show." And then we were talking about it, think, yeah, but what he wants to show, it's very useful for a lot of people. We want to give him some more time because we think his story is good. So, but well, long story short, it took a long while. So I'm very happy that you're here. And I just wanted to say that before you start. So go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to have to move through the slides pretty quickly. This was an hour-long presentation when I gave it at Summit in Orlando a couple weeks ago. So I'll have to go through this pretty quickly. There is some I can skip over. To give you a short preview of what we're doing, it's going to be a fully dynamic connector. So the connector runs completely dynamic. The connector shell itself that lives inside of Power Automate really is just, it's like a meta programming sort of thing. So really cool. I'll get into it right away. So this is about me. I like code. I like stuff. I'm going to go through this stuff quickly. I'm going to skip by a bunch of this. Amjed did a great job talking about what connectors are, so I'm not even going to speak to these slides. But I will get into some of the interface that we're all familiar with. This is how we make our connectors. You can do it this way, and in this point and click, the boring normal way to do it. But you can't do advanced things in here, with the exception of policies. So what I'm going to talk about is in the Swagger editor. So you can get to that by clicking the little guy here, or you can write it in something else. But this is what we'll be using for the kind of primary. This is what I'm talking to here, is the actual connector subdata, the raw code that we're going to be looking at. So the standard features that we have in connectors are normal things. This is sort of the format that we need to put into it, and we've got the operation, and this is the HTTP method that we're using, the parameters that come into it, and the responses. Some of the things that you need to know is that Power Automate's super picky about formats. Sure, as independent publisher authors, you guys have all seen this, where it has to be a string always, and if it's not a string, you have to type convert it. And Power Automate will enforce that and break your flows if things come out in the wrong format. These are the types and formats that are available in the standard connectors. I apologize, I'm moving through the standard stuff so quickly because I'm trying to move us along. So just kind of going through that quick, I assume this is something you guys already know. What we're going to talk about today are the dynamic values, the dynamic schema, and the policies. There's also custom code, but I'm not going to get into that. We're just going to focus on these three things here, and I'm going to try my best to get through this so that we can have a time for a demo. So the first thing we're going to look at is the dynamic values. And this is in the connector documentation as MS dynamic values and MS dynamic list. There's two of them, and I don't really know the reason why there's two, but it doesn't hurt to include both. So what is a dynamic value? It's something like this, where you want to say, hey, we want to have a list here, a drop-down list, but we don't know what it's going to be in that list until we ask the server what has in it. What's in that list. So the dynamic values allows you to reach out and ask your API for what should populate a list in the dropdown. And the way that looks is like this in the connector schema. So as you build out your schema, you're going to be using this XMS dynamic values and XMS dynamic list. And what that does is this is a post request to this endpoint. And it requires this parameter of resource type. And in order to get the resource type, it needs to call this other parameter. So we have this other operation called get resources documented elsewhere, and it looks just like this. It has its own operation ID, its own URL, and its own HTTP method. And it then returns data with a name and a resource. And we use this configuration to populate the drop-down list here. So how does that work? We put it into the parameters here. So if you put it into a parameter for an operation, which is what you see here with the dynamic values and the dynamic list, then it's basically just saying, hey, we need this for the URL. And like I said, this is going to reach out and get this parameter data. So what's happening is you see we have this resource in the path. So resource is the name of this variable. And this is saying
Nick,
we're going to get...
So
Yeah.
I think we're not looking at what you're talking about. We're still on the dynamic values slide, and you're saying yes.
Boo. Let me
yeah.
try the
now
other
it's
way.
understanding dynamic values I'm looking at.
Yeah, my connection upload is terrible here. I've got the other way to do this. I'm going to do the present in Teams option. See if that works. Okay, can you see the slide?
It's loading on my side.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. I'm going to jump us ahead. So this is where I was talking, and now I get to use a laser pointer. That's fun. Okay, so let me explain a little bit more about what's going on. In this operation, we need to get items by resource, and that's that drop-down list. So this is going to say, we need this resource type. So in order to get the resource type, we need to ask for this resource. So you're basically saying we're going to get this resource value, and in order to get that, we're going to make a call to this XMS dynamic values, which is a totally different operation. So when we make that call out, we're going to call get resources, and then these two things talk about the data that comes out. One of them specifies the title, so we're going to show the user the title, but we're going to use the value of it differently. So we can have the machine readable value here, and then the human readable value here. So what's presented in the dropdown is the human readable value, and then what's put in here is the machine value. So this is what happens, is it makes a call to the get resources. So if you saw in the previous slide, it says get resources. This is what that operation looks like. And this is all still inside the same connector definition file. And so you can see all this is doing is just a get request to resources, and it comes back with an object with key and name and resource. And this is going to be our human readable, and this is going to be our machine readable one. This is an example of what it looks like when it comes out. So here's how the whole thing flows. We've got in order to make this post request here, we need to know what parameter we want. So we have to ask the resource type and say, hey, we're going to say, get me a list of resources. That makes this JSON request out, and it gets this array that comes back with all the different resources. And you can see that the name here is mapped to the name there. And then the resource, you can only tell this because it's different capitalization. But the resource then is the machine readable one, and that resource is going to get mapped back up into there. So now we've got this cool, fully dynamic thing that in order to get a list here, we're going to see what we're going to ask the server for what those values are. So we can take this a step further. I want to get a little further ahead. And one of the things we can say is we've got a example API response, and that is saying that we want to say here's the topic. This is the attributes is an array kind of deep inside of here. But how do we present the list of attributes in a dropdown? So here we want to say we're going to use the skill as the human readable part, and then for the machine readable part, we're going to say Nick is kind of bad at public speaking. So in order to do this, we're going to use this value collection. So that means that when your API response has it coming back, and it's not just a simple array, like a simple list of items, you can actually look kind of a little bit further down, and you can get this nested item. So you can say that this item then, this attributes is going to be where the collection of values is. And then within that, we can say skill, this is going to be the human readable, and then the rank is going to be what we're going to use for the machine readable. And this is what it would look like inside of your connector definition. So that's cool for dynamic values, but let's go a little bit further and let's say, well, we've got this dependent values, right? So essentially here, this is one of our connectors for contact form 7. And what's happening here is it's saying, well, we need to pick out so we want to find out what form we want for this trigger. So what's happening is it's going to say, well, pick the website that has our plugin installed, and then from that website, we're going to reach out and find out the list of forms. But you can't get the list of forms until you've actually picked the website. So to do that, we've got 2 parameters in here, and I'm using the references here because this connector ended up reusing it all over the place. So this is a cool little thing that you can use to reference parameters. So essentially, this is our trigger here, and so anyway, it has 2 parameters that it needs. First is the this header parameter, which is the website URL, and then it needs the form parameter in the path. So in order to get the header, it has here you can see the X dynamic values, and that's just doing the drop down for the header. So that's the one for the for the WordPress site URL. And that's going to get the list of domains. And so that just calls this other operation. But then to get the form, which is the list of forms, then it needs to call the X dynamic values. That's a little further down. Here's X dynamic values here calls get the forms, but you can see there's a new parameter, or there's a new block that appeared that I haven't talked about yet, and that is parameters. So you can see this one here for X dynamic values doesn't have the parameters, and then this one does. So that means that this one requires this WP site URL, which is this guy, and that's how you can then make it dependent. So now when it tries to fill out this one and present it to the user, it says, oh, we can't do this yet. We need to fill out this parameter, and then it goes back and it looks up here for where that parameter is. So that's where it looks. I think the slides here kind of describe this. Yep, so there's the form ID parameter. And now this is just everything I just spoke about. So here we go. So when we get into what the actual, we're going to take a look at the next part of this, and that is the dynamic schema. So dynamic schema is the other cool part. And that's basically saying the first part here, we've selected our resource type. We did that with the X dynamic values, but then this is all the stuff that we have to submit. And this is the X dynamic schema. So what this is saying is we know the server has told us the resources that we can work with. We're going to work with a coupon. And then when we choose coupon, we need to know what the shape of that coupon object looks like. And we're actually depending on the server to tell us what the shape of the object looks like. So that's going to go through something called the XMX, the dynamic properties. And this is in the, this one happens to be passed as a body to the post. But the resource schema is going to be then another parameter, and it's going to be the body. And we're using this dynamic properties to get that list of, to get that schema. So essentially, what that means is we've got the magic endpoint here. So this resource schema operation is this guy over here. And that's saying that we're going to make this call to the server, and it's going to be an options request to the same to this endpoint with that initial coupon item that we picked from the dropdown. We're going to make this options request, and then when that data comes back, it looks like this. So it comes back with all of these things. And we say that the schema that we're interested in is in this get object item. So this is what that request looks like. So if we make this request here, and this is actually the options request to this. So we make an options request here, then we get back this, and the get item here has this data that comes back. So if you can control your API, if you can control what comes back from it and have it come back in formatted data like this, you're able to use this to describe the objects and have it be fully dynamic. This is how this is directly used to render these fields over here. So this is coming from our end server installed onto the person's WordPress site, and then that's actually describing itself to Power Automate at runtime. So when you go to build this out, it's fully dynamic. So if you were to customize the WordPress side, then it will be customized on the Power Automate side instantaneously at the time of build. So a couple of things to know is that the operation ID for the resource schema has to exist in your connector, so you have to actually put it in there. It doesn't need to be public, but you have to write the definition for it. The one you want to use is called XMX Dynamic Properties. There's only two. There's Dynamic Schema as well, but you only really need to use the new one. I don't know why there's two. There's probably some kind of backwards compatibility reasons for that. And then the response from JSON needs to be in an open API format. So that's the same format that you're writing your connector definitions in. You need to provide that back from your server. And so if you were going to put it all together, this is how you'd be able to write the connector specification just one time and send that off and get it certified. But then any updates that you want are fully dynamic, handled outside of Power Automate. So that's what we're doing with our WooCommerce connector. It's 100% driven by the client side, which means that different users of the WooCommerce connector are going to see different interfaces on Power Automate using the same connector definition. So this means that you're not going to talk to Amjed a whole lot. Sorry, Amjed, because once you've written this, then it becomes fully dynamic and you're able to control it outside of the connector definition space. And this is what that looks like. With a fully dynamic connector, we essentially have complete coverage of the entire API, but it's covered in just these 6 actions or 7 actions. So we've got the trigger, and then we have a create, delete, find, a get, and an update. And then there's another one here for batch operations. But these all kind of translate over to the HTTP verbs, if you're familiar with those at all. So what that means is the create does the post, the delete does the delete. And so you can see this is all like pretty cool the way it's engineered, because now if you understand the APIs, you can see how this directly maps, and it becomes very understandable because we've done it across everything the same way. So as we keep going, you can see that you only really have to read one connector. So you really only have to read one of these operations to know how everything works. So essentially, if you understand one of the actions, you understand all of the actions because it's all engineered in the same way. And there's more to go over here with the, so I'll go over this more in the demo, and I think we still have time if I keep going quickly. I'll go to that in the demo. So yeah, let's skip over the rest of this because now I start to get into policies. I'm gonna stop here because this is the coolest part. I didn't want to, and I'll go into the demo instead. So I'm gonna exit here, and we'll go to the demo. I don't know that I understood your question, Rebecca. Okay, so here is.
So it's more about you obviously have to define something. So you define more generic kind of actions, but what you do in these actions is totally depending on how something on the other end is configured, or.
Totally right. Yep. So this trigger, we only have one trigger, and it's called when a WooCommerce event happens. And then from here, you pick what resource type you want to work with. So let's say, hey, when an order, or say like when a coupon, and then from here you can see it's dependent. So the first list there, it reached out already. That's kind of cached, but now it just asked for well, when a coupon is updated. Now your trigger is for when a coupon is updated. but you can easily change it, and you can say when an order, and then we'll wait for it to load. You can say when an order has the status changed, now your trigger has changed. You haven't had to change anything in the trigger, but you can see it's fully dynamic. So essentially, this whole coupon section doesn't even appear unless you've turned on coupons in your store. So you won't see coupon as an option because it knows when you do it at build time to ask the server what the capabilities are, and then the server describes itself, and then that's how the whole thing works. And the same thing works across all of the different ones. So we can see we only have a couple of actions. So this one's find a list. So this one, you can see it says find a list of customers, and this is what the search parameters are. So we pre-fill, because the server can tell us what these things look like. We pre-fill all of the parameters here. So it's very similar to what you'd see in like the Dataverse connector. And you can see if I switch it to order, the whole field, the whole form changes. So I switched to order, and now it's going out and it's asking for what does an order look like? And you can see it's totally different. And that works on the back end like this. So the first thing it does is it asks for a list of resources. And that's all we're doing here is we get a list of resources. And then if we wanted to get a product, so this would be to get a single product, for example. Now we get, or I'm sorry, this is a list of products. But because I've built it to HTTP standards, the only thing we need to do is pop this over to options. And options are basically saying, what is this? It's an options request is used to get kind of detail or options about what it's keeping. So we're using the options request here to provide us with the API schema, which you can see is all in this Microsoft kind of Swagger API schema format. And this object that it returns, you come back, you go to this resource here for product, and it tells you how to use it for all the different things. So the schema here describes the object itself, but if you were going to make a GET request, then the GET request is a different sort of request. So when you say GET the product, then you have all these options that are available. So this is how you then would search for products. But you can also make a POST request to the same endpoint. And if you were going to make a post, then this is what it's going to look like. So this is how we're returning all of the options here, and it becomes a very understandable thing across the entire space. I've shown you 2 endpoints, and now you understand the entire space of the entire implementation, and it can be easily extended. And just as long as we build to that standard, then it will just extend the whole thing across the entire API space of the WooCommerce connector. We're at time. Did I cover this? Does this make sense?
I think this was great. It was informative. It was educational. It gave examples. This was fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you for, I don't know, rushing a little bit too, because I'm sure you had so much content to cover. But that was fantastic. That about concludes our session for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who came, and thank you as well to Chandra, who had to drop for an appointment, and to Amjed, and to Rebecca, and you, of course, Nick. This was really fantastic. Oh, I see people in the chat. Appreciate it. That's so great. We're going to start this back up as a monthly cadence, so please keep your eyes out on social media for hearing about the next cadence. I'm hoping that we'll just continue doing whatever this is, second Wednesday of the month or something. Logistically should work out. Please fill out that form if you have specific things that you would like to talk about, that you would like to learn. And if you are a connector publisher, please let me know if you would be interested in demoing, just like Nick or Chandra did today. We would love to see your demo as well. Awesome. Any closing remarks from you guys?
Yeah, thank you. Reach out if you have any questions. Shoot me an email.
Yes.
Hopefully it
It
made
was
sense.
just it was great to see this, and just great to be back again.
Yes. This was fantastic. And I'm also going to be investigating how we can get this on YouTube as well to share with a larger audience who maybe was not able to be present today. So keep your eyes open.
Awesome. That would be
Awesome.
great. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Rebecca and Amjed and Chandra and Jocelyn.
Awesome. With that, I'm going to stop
Thank you,
recording.
everybody.